The book of Yashar says that on the third day when Avraham lifted up his eyes, he saw in the distance the place which the Lord had spoken unto him. And a pillar of fire, reaching from the earth up to heaven, appeared upon the mountain. And the glory of the Lord was seen in the midst of the clouds. And Avraham said unto Isaac, seest thou on that mountain, which is visible in the distance, anything unusual as I do see it? And Yitschaq replied, saying unto his father, I see a pillar of fire and a cloud, and the glory of Adonai is visible upon the cloud. And Avraham knew at once that Yitzchak was acceptable as a burnt offering before Hashem. Now Avraham then asked Eliezer and Yishmael, his son Yishmael and Eliezer, who was originally he was going to make heir to his household, do you observe something unusual upon the top of yonder mountain in the distance? And they answered, saying, we see nothing more than the mountains of the land. Then Avraham knew at once that they were not wanted by Adonai to go with Avraham and Yitschaq. And Avraham said unto them, abide you here, stay here with the donkey, and I and my son Yitzchak will pass on to yonder mountain, and we will mishtachavim, we will prostrate down there before Adonai in prayer, and then return unto you. And Eliezer remained with Yishmael in the place that Avraham pointed out to him. When you read it, can't you feel the truth to this? at least the identity of the two sons. Doesn't it just seem to fit? Doesn't it just seem just right? You know, on Yachad, it's interesting. The Dead Sea Scrolls personalities, and it used to be thought that they were Essenes, but there's some scholarly evidence of late that suggests that maybe they were not Essenes, but they're another group. And they had a special community which would live together in a certain place, and they called that community the Yachad. Isn't that interesting? From Yachid, right? The Yachad, the unity, also with overtones of the beloved community, the ones that were very zealous, more than anything else. This group who lived in Qumran, they were zealous for purity. Purity, something we need, Rabbi, to be sure that we have in our lives. We must have purity of our mind. Hebrew would express it as tahor levav, right? Purity of the heart, but meaning of the mind. If you find yourself contemplating certain sins, or having a fascination or an imagination over certain sins and allowing that to play out in your mind, you need to take steps to stop it, to keep this battleground a pure place for Hashem. We mentioned this a little bit in Josh number 17 this year. But we should be reminded of it always. If you're indulging in certain things in your mind that are not kosher, you have to stop it. Try to find ways to hack your own mind. Okay, there are ways you can stop yourself, and every person is different. But you know what it is, or you should discover what it is that will help you to stop if you're having certain daydreams or something that are not kosher. It's not a sin for it to pop up in the first place, right? The temptation. But if you indulge in it, that's the problem. And Hamakom can help you. Praying a psalm is one way that is very useful for purging out the Yetzer Hara. Genesis chapter 22, verse 5. Vayomer Avraham el narav Shuv Lekha po im hachamor vani v'hanahar v'nerecha ad ko v'nishtachavei v'nashuva alechem. Then Avraham said to his lads, remain, like sit, literally sit for yourselves. It's interesting. We have the Lekh Lekha, call to Hashem in this mitzvah and in a previous command to get out of Ur Chasdim. And now we have Shuv Lekha. So sit for yourselves. Very interesting. You could probably have a whole drash on that. I just thought about it, why he says for yourselves, right? So sit for yourselves, pull, that means here, Aim hachamor, with the donkey. The Bekhor Shor comments, he did not want to take them along lest they prevent him from slaughtering his son. You could certainly see that happening, right? What are you doing, Avraham? I think the old bat has lost his mind, right? You can totally see there. He's tying up his son, putting him on there, right? And these two lads could certainly overpower him. So I think Bekhor Shor has a point. It could be. It might not be just that they were not worthy to be there for the offering, but it might really be he doesn't want someone to stop him from doing the mitzvah. That's why he didn't tell Sarah. He doesn't want to be stopped. He wants to fulfill. That's why he got up early. Everybody's still asleep. You could also think that maybe this is part of why he saddled the donkey and chopped the wood himself too. He doesn't want a lot of questions being asked. Nashuva, this is such a great example of faith. Nashuva, we will return. But it's not just we will return. We will return is nashuv. You don't say nashuva. Just nashuv. Nashuv means we will return. You see the little hay at the end here? That's something extra. I'll get to the hay in a moment. Let's look at Ibn Ezra first. We will return to you. Some ask how Avraham could have possibly said this. Others say he intended to bring Isaac's bones back with him. But Avraham was simply saying this to them so that they would not leave before he came back. And so Isaac would not realize what was happening and run away. Ibn Ezra always the more consternation of opinions. Dr. Vera shares from the NASB, Genesis 21, verses 9 through 10. In Genesis 21, Yishmael and Hagar were thrown out of the camp of Abraham. How can Yishmael be one of the two lads? Now Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had born of Avraham mocking. Therefore, she said to Avraham, okay, so it's a whole thing about her getting drunk. Yeah, so, okay, this is, if you think about it, this is, I'm not sure where you copy that from which commentary, but if you think about it, it's really not a hard question to answer. So, in this day and age, in the United States, around 50% of marriages end in divorce, right? So let's ask the question. When a married couple, which have a child, divorce, if the father is a halfway decent person, and Avraham we can say is very decent, does he totally disappear from the life of the child? Or does he have contact with the child? Does he still want to oversee? He still wants to go and mentor? If they live in different states or different provinces, does he ever travel to see the child? Of course. So it's really not absurd in any way to imagine that just because Sarah wanted the child and Hagar kicked out, and remember we explained this is because of the Lipat Ishtar, right? The idea that would then disinherit the child from getting anything that was Yitzhak's, right? By letting go of the slave wife and letting go of her son, that son would then lose his portion of inheritance. So he couldn't have a claim on Isaac. And especially remember, Yitzhak is very young. So what if, Sarah might even be thinking, what if Avraham dies this year? It wouldn't be that difficult for Ishmael to come back as really an adult and make a claim, right? At least to be the heir apparent, right, as a firstborn son. You could see people doing this. But by exercising the statutes in the Lipat Ishtar of releasing the slave wife and releasing her son, they have no more claim. But she never, nor could she tell her husband, do not go see your son, right? You think Avraham had any kind of attachment to Ishmael? He's 15 years old when he leaves. It's his first child. For sure he loved him much. So the sages understand that he continued to train Ishmael, and that Ishmael would even come and visit them, right, and stay with them for certain times. But he had already been released, so he had no claim on the inheritance. Okay, does that help? Yeah, it's nice. I don't know where you got that, but it's okay question, decent question. Yeah, good. Thanks, Doc. Okay, Doc says great. Good. Okay, and then let's look at this hay here. Remember, I said you don't need the hay. You don't need this purple letter. You don't need that. Okay. And have we made hay letter of the day, letter of the week yet? Let's make it letter of the week now if we haven't. Hay is going to be letter of the week. Okay. If you haven't learned how to read Hebrew, this week you are to learn this letter. Hey, and I'm sorry if I did it before, but I don't think we've done the hey yet. Hey. Oh, maybe we did. Makes an H on. Oh, well. You got a freebie this week. Repeat it. Hey, as an H. That does not need to be in this word to say we will return. This hey is something special. We call it a emphatic hey, which means it's like a little exclamation point, right? Hebrew students know this form as the cohortative, right? But it emphasizes what he's saying. And it's very possible that this vav also is a vav emphaticum, that it might add to it. So it might be, for sure we will return, Alechem, which actually bolsters Ibn Ezra's opinion that we will come back, don't leave. Alechem, unto you all, Gersonides comments, he did not want to tell them what was happening because he himself was not yet sure how things would turn out. I always love Gersonides' perspective, right? He humanizes Avraham. He himself wasn't sure what's going to happen, right? Is he going to bring back his bones? Will it take 3 days before Isaac raises from the dead, or will it be instant after he slaughters him? Or will Hashem change his mind? He didn't know. Didn't really know how this is going to end up. All right, now we have Genesis chapter 22, verse 6. Sorry, I just got to turn on the light real quick. Vayikach Avraham et atzei haolah vayasem al Yitzchak beno vayikach biyado et ha'esh ve'et ha'machelet vayelechu shneihem yachad. Then Avraham took the wood for the offering. Okay, so let's stop right there. Okay, we'll read a little bit more. And he placed it upon Yitzchak. That means he's carrying it, his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. And the two of them, they walked on together. And here again we have Yachad together. I think it's reminding us again about how Yitzchak is Yachido, or Yechido, he's his beloved son, his species unique son. So coming up to taking wood and stuff, Sarna, and he's supported in Midrash Tanchuma, comments, Avraham took the wood, that is, he took it off the beast of burden. He himself carried the dangerous articles, the firestone and the knife, right? The boy's carrying the wood, but Avraham is carrying the firestone and the knife so that the boy not be harmed and the sacrificial victim be bli me'umah, is how it would say in Hebrew, without blemish, unblemished, at the time, at the moment, or it could also be tamim, at the moment of slaughter, right? So he's thinking if he is an olah, he must be without blemish. He can't be injured, he can't be lame, and he can't be injured by the knife cut in advance, right? Avraham has done enough of these things to realize what is required by the Lord for something that is ultimately holy, a holy burnt offering. No pun intended. There is a touch of bitter irony here, Sarna writes. Isaac, unaware, cooperates in carrying some of the instruments of his own destruction. This is, again, we're not going with the Midrash on this, just a modernist perspective. He whose name means laughter appears to be on the verge of becoming the personification of tragedy. It's a very nice point. Cheftsbiya writes, it's a challenge for us to emulate Avraham in obeying his commandments. He was intentionally proactive and passionate, and he makes sure nothing or no one hinders him from achieving instructions. Abba gave him. It's the instructions Abba gave him. It's I believe, a matter of the heart and having the right perspective that his commandments are not burdensome, but a privilege to show the fulfilling of instructions, show our love for him. Yeah, I was counseling one of our members this week, and I was talking to this person, and a lot of us, we go through struggles, right, with the mitzvot and stuff. And this person also had been struggling with some of the mitzvot. And in the end, I think it was an issue of perspective, right? We have this perspective sometimes we can get into. If you find yourself getting overly burdened by doing the mitzvot exactly in this way, then I would say take a step back and do them more generally, right? Like, if trying to live up to, say, an orthodox perspective is not working for you, take a step back and do it like the Am Haaretz did it. There's different traditions for tying tzitzit, for example. There's the Ashkenazi way, there's the Sephardic way, which is more beautiful, has a ring goes all the way around it. And then there's the Am Haaretz, which is very simple, right? So just to take the example of tzitzit, just do the Am Haaretz. If these things are becoming, if it's making you a little too obsessive compulsive, right? And a friend of mine from years back, we're out of touch now, but he was a psychologist with his PhD from Harvard in psychology, and he used to say that Jews have a propensity to be obsessive compulsive, right? And And it's really, if you're raised in the way of doing all the mitzvot and doing them correctly and all this stuff, then, and there's such a, the Mashiach will come if enough people do this right, and that there's kind of like, you can see how this obsessive compulsiveness can happen, right? Like the person is concerned that, any wrong step might incite either the wrath of God, or Messiah won't come, or the community will be punished, right? Because some of the mitzvot, the whole community gets punished if one person does it. Like we see in the book of Joshua. When Joshua, there's the guy Achan, right? And Achan, remember, Jericho is supposed to be a choma. It's supposed to be banished to total destruction, including all the silver, the gold, the animals, the babies, etc. Everything burned and destroyed, so that nothing could carry the spiritual wickedness that the Anakim, that the Nephilim had influenced that town with. Nor the idolatry. And Achan, he takes, what's he take? He takes this tongue, and he takes some silver pieces, and and he buries this stuff in his tent, and all of Israel starts losing battles, right? The whole army is being affected by the sins of this one man's family. And of course, it eventually comes out what's happening. And, they kill him. they cut off the evil from a mix. So you can understand how you could kind of have this pseudo-obsessive compulsive response to not only doing the mitzvot, but doing the way that our sages teach that we should do them. Right? So our perspective here is not that we have to always do everything perfectly the way the sages teach. The sages are useful for instruction, and we emulate. It's kind of our default position. But if, in so keeping the mitzvot in the way that they teach is going to cause you to rebel and not do them at all, then don't do it that way. Relax a little bit, take a step back, and do them in a more relaxed fashion. You still do them, right? We still do them, because I think you will find, just as Cheftsbiya commented, it's not a burden to do his mitzvot. It's a privilege. If you adjust your perspective so that you feel lucky, I'm so lucky I get to do this. Like Avraham, when I shared recently about the Brit Milah that he went through. He was so excited, and the sages talked about how he'd been waiting for this mitzvah, and finally it's here. And he circumcises himself at this late age in life. Thanks for the comment. This is the proper perspective. Oh, I'm sorry. I just noticed it was to organizers. Sorry to out you. What about this word machelet? This is kind of an odd word for knife. Machelet. I think you'll appreciate the etymology of this word as shared by the Rashbam. He says the unusual Hebrew word used here comes from the root that means to eat. Achal. Right? So let me just show that to you guys. Achal. So look at the purple word. Here is the root of the word. It's a special kind of slaughtering, butchering knife. You see the root achal? Achal means eat. Right? This is what the Rashbam is talking about up here, to eat. This is a regular biblical Hebrew metaphor. My sword devours flesh, the Rashbam points out in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 42. Following up on this a bit more, Rashi comments that machelet means a knife. It is so called from achal, to eat, because it devours the meat, just as you say, and he uses the same example there. Or because it makes animal flesh fit for eating by killing the animal in a kosher manner, right? You have to kill the animal quickly with a quick slice right on the jugular, not hitting the trachea, not causing excessive pain to the animal, to reduce the pain as much as possible, so that so much blood flows out that it reduces the nerve receptors, hopefully. Because while the animal is living, its flesh is unfit for eating. Another explanation, zot nikaot, this knife is called machelet, and the term is never used of an ordinary knife, because Israel still eats of the reward given for it. And Rashi is referring to the great Midrash B'reishit Rabbah, chapter 56, section 3. The markups are gone there. Let me see. Maybe. Oh, there we go. I just had the animations out of order. Okay. So here we have Genesis chapter 22, verse 7. Vayomer Yitschaq el Avraham avi vayomer avihi vayomer hineni veni vayomer hinei haesh v'haitzim ve'ayeh haseh leolah. Then Yitzchak said unto Avraham, his father, and he said, Avi, my father. Vayomer, and he said, Hineni, here am I. Veni, my son. Vayomer, and he said, Hine, behold, the fire, and meaning the flint and steel probably, and the wood. But where is the lamb for the offering? And by the way, I'll just give you a little secret here. Our congregation name, Simchat Hashem, when we were coming up with a name, Daniel wanted whatever it was to spell out to be like an acronym for Seh, for lamb, right? Sin, Hey. And so we came up with Simchat Hashem, right? So when you see it together, it's Seh, it's lamb, right? It's kind of expressing our belief in the Mashiach Yeshua, while also having kind of a more standard Torah name like Simchat Hashem, the joy of the law, expressing our devotion to God's commandments. So, and some people, they've asked in the past why some places it says Seh, why in other places it says Tzon, why in other places we have these, it's keep Seh or keep Sa, and why in some other places it's this. We have many words for sheep in Hebrew. Seh is the generalized term, the overarching term. It could be an old sheep, it could be a young sheep, it could be a yearling, it could be a fattened sheep, it could be etc. So it's like the category, the genus of the whole thing. So regarding Yitzhak speaking, Sarna comments that fathers equivocally reply, must surely sustain whatever doubts there are, especially in an age when human sacrifice is possible, right? So you have to understand, Isaac might be realizing this is possible. According to Sefer HaYashar, he gets the answer directly from Avraham already. He tells him, God chose you to be a sacrifice, my son, and we're going to go offer you up as an olah. And it's a beautiful story. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend reading Yashar. We don't have time to do it right now, but it goes on talking about how they're both crying on the way up the mountain. Yitzchak is happy and proud to be an olah to God, but of course, his life's going to end and it's going to hurt and all this stuff. So he's also crying, and Avram's crying because to lose his son, right? And it's kind of like bittersweet tears that they're having in this midrash. Whether it happens where or not, we don't know, right? It is a midrash, but it's really nice the way it goes through. And in the midrash, we have Yitzhak telling Avraham, make sure to tie it tighter, father, the ropes, because I'm afraid when you go to slaughter me, cutting my neck, I might try to resist out of instinct. My Yetzer Hara might overcome me, and I want to escape, right? So it's a beautiful example from the midrash how we need to put boundaries around ourselves. If we know we're weak, let's say that you know that you're weak around the opposite sex, right? And that, say you might be prone to doing some kind of sin with the opposite sex, well, you need to establish a boundary for yourself. Know thyself, right? The famous Latin saying, know thyself. So there's not a universal answer. I mean, there's Shomer Negia, and there's all these kind of things that are nice, but you might just never be alone with the opposite sex, might be something that you need, depending on how great the temptation is, right? Or maybe with alcohol. Maybe, there's nothing wrong with drinking alcohol, but maybe you fought in your life with being alcoholic. So you really don't even need to take a path where one of the stops on the way home is past a bar or something like this, right? And each person's different. We all have our own burdens to bear, our own execution stakes to carry, right? But we need to be aware of what they are. And this is very nice in the Midrash. Yitzhak, he knows that he might panic, right? At the moment when he's about to have his neck sliced, and so he says, Father, tie me tighter. I think I can get out of this. So Sarna goes on to comment, the poignant tension inherent in the situation is heightened by the repetition of the words, Avi and Veni, my father and my son. The bond between the two remains unbroken. The brief dialogue over, the only such recorded dialogue between Isaac and his father. They continue their fateful trek in perfect harmony. Which, of course, does open up the door to the Midrash that I mentioned. Hine ha'esh, here's the fire. What about the other stuff? Gersonides comments, we learn that Avraham regularly offered sacrifice, and that Yitschaq had seen him doing so. That's why he knows to ask these questions, that he had taught him rightly. From Midrash Rabbah 56:4, and Yitzchak spoke to Avraham his father and said, "My father." Samael went. So Samael this is one of the names for the devil, right? One of the names that he gets in Jewish tradition. So Samael went to our father Avraham and said, old man, have you lost your mind?" Literally, have you lost your heart in the Hebrew? "You are going to slay a son given to you at the age of 100? Even this I do," replied he. Samael said, "And if he sets you an even greater task, can you stand it? As it is written, if a thing be put to you as a trial, you will be wearied." Job chapter 4 verse 2. "Even more than this," he replied. Samael said, "Tomorrow he will say to you, you are guilty of murder. You murdered your son." He replied, "Still I go." Seeing that he could not achieve anything with him, he approached Yitzchak and said, "Son of an unhappy mother, he is going to slay you." He replied, "Still I go." Samael said, "And if so, all these fine tunics which your mother made will be a legacy for Yishmael, the hated one of her house. And you don't care? Literally, don't let it into your heart. If a word is not completely effective, it may yet be effective in part. That's why it's written. And Yitzchak spoke to Avraham his father and said, 'My father.' Why his father, my father, twice? So that he should be filled with compassion for him. And he said, 'Behold the fire and the wood.' Avraham said to him, 'May that man who has thus seduced him be drowned. Anyway, God will provide himself the lamb, my son. And if not, you are the lamb for the burnt offering, my son.' So they went both of them together, one to slaughter and the other to be slaughtered." Midrash Genesis Rabbah 56:4. And bear with me, folks, we're almost finished. We have here from the book of Jacob, chapter 4, verse 7. And some people, they might not know, what's the book of Jacob? Well, in Greek, there's a book that's called Yaakov. So that's Jacob, right? It's very close from the Hebrew Yaakov. They're just transliterating. So who is Jacob? Well, in English, this is usually James. But you know, the Gentiles, they like their traditions a lot. So even to this day, none of the modern popular Bibles call this the book of Jacob, even though it's a very clear translational error to translate our father Jacob as Jacob and not this Jacob as Jacob. So the book of Jacob, chapter 4, verse 7, it says, "Therefore submit to God. Moreover, take a stand." This word antistete, this is like natsav in Hebrew, natsav, to position yourself spiritually, to take a stand against something, against the adversary. Look at this word for adversary, to diabolo in Greek, the devil, against the devil, and he will flee from you. Notice it doesn't say against the Satan, it's against the devil, the nachash. Come close to God, and he will come close to you. Engisate totheo, kai engieu umin. Clean your hands, katharisate chayris, like we get the word cathartic. In English, it's from this katharisate. This means tahar or tiher, to make them pure, to purify your hands. Really, right? Purify your hands. O amartuloi, O sinners, and purify your kardias, your hearts. You double-minded people. And in Hebrew, double-minded is a person who is lev valev. In the Psalms, it says lev valev, heart and heart. It's two hearts, right? Meaning two minds, to be double-minded. Take a stand. If you find you're in overt temptation lately, make your stand that much stronger. Hack yourself, hack your mind, find out what it takes for you to not be tempted, to get away, to flee from it. And Hashem will see it and he will bless you. I just want to end today with... Congratulations, you finished this part. If you want to stand with us financially, please visit our patreon.com address listed on the screen. Another way to help is by subscribing to our channel and hit the bell so you get notifications. Or you can like it with a thumbs up. This helps us, as well as leaving a comment down below. All these things